I'm from Texas A&M Life Extension, so kind of the same group as the three people that introduced at the beginning of this. I'm an extension specialist, but I'm also a professor at Texas A&M. So I teach class, I do extension, and I do research in the area of poultry and poultry. One of my areas for the extension that I focus on is the smaller scale and backyard chicken. But I also work extensively with the commercial poultry industry here in the U.S. and abroad as well, looking at and meat and egg production as well. So I usually start these talks off with a little bit of a quiz. You always don't, obviously, I'm not expecting an answer. I'm going to tell you the answers as I go along, but just kind of get some misconceptions that a lot of people, when they have poultry or read on the internet, think things about chickens and eggs. Kind of go over those real quick here. One of the first things people usually think is they think that getting brown eggs or chicken that lays brown eggs is going to give them healthier eggs. They also think the brown eggs generally have darker yolks than a white laying hen would have. Both of these things are false. The brown eggs are not healthier than white eggs. They're going to have the same nutrition. The only thing that affects the eggs' nutrition is what you're feeding that bird. So if your bird is eating certain things that are high in omega-3s, then they're going to have more omega-3s in the eggs. If they're eating certain things, there's brands out there that advertise, oh, we had healthier this or that. It's because they're feeding certain substances to them that the chickens then laying down the eggs. But if you're feeding a basic diet to your birds, they're not going to be any more nutritious if they're brown or white eggs. It's what they're going to eat is going to affect that. The yolks also that's also false. The color of the yolk, again, is also controlled by what the birds are eating. So generally, a lot of people think brown eggs are darker because generally brown eggs historically are from birds that are out eating more vegetation, because people usually free-range brown birds more than they do a white egg layer historically, because brown birds tend to handle that a lot. Brown egg laying birds tend to handle that historically better than a lot of the white egg laying breeds. So that can affect that. So if you don't believe me, I'm going to go show you some pictures here of just some stuff we've done. We had some brown egg layers, some green egg layers, and some white egg layers, and we housed them all in the same area. We fed them the exact same thing. So then we got some eggs out of them here. Then we hard boiled some eggs, and some people were pointing out you can kind of see with this one maybe it's brown shell because the pigment got through onto the membrane there. But otherwise, you can't tell the difference between the yolks or the whites. You wouldn't be able to guess generally if this was a brown, green, or white egg laying chicken, shell chicken that you would get there. So you can't tell. That's what they are. This is the white one. This is the green one. That's the brown one. Can't tell. Otherwise, they would basically the same color, look the same. In case you think it's just because I hard boiled them, they are not hard boiled. I have no idea which one is which in this bowl. No one else is going to be able to tell me it's a green, brown, or whatever. So they're the same eggs. It doesn't have anything to do with that. If you think nutritionally, so we also tested some of the main nutrition factors would be protein in an egg. While you're eating eggs is for the protein. If you look at them, the difference in our birds, mainly the blue eggs were a little smaller, the blue screen eggs. But if you look at the percentage of protein in them and the albumin, which is the white or the yolk or the total protein, they're all about the same. There's no difference in the breed of bird in terms of the nutrition there if they're all eating the same thing. It's said. So some people may argue that certain, if you raise your birds in your backyard, you like the way your eggs taste better than a store-bought egg. The main reason that is, and some people maybe get grossed out by this, is because your birds, one, they're eating vegetation, which can change the taste of the egg. But the other thing they're eating that most cage layers or commercial birds are not eating is they're eating bugs, and they eat the bugs, and then the fat in those bugs gets put into the egg. So if you like a stronger tasting egg that is from a bird that you're raising that's running around, that's because you like that bug fat flavor that gets put down in there, because that is what's really changing the flavor profile of an egg versus a bird that's in a confined, maybe indoor housing that's not getting exposed to those bugs to be able to eat them. What determines the yolk is what I said. It's what they eat. The main thing of that is natural pigments that occur in some plants. These are called xenophils. So which is something else. They're carotenoid, kind of what we call carotenoid-rich plants, and that gives oranginess to the yolk. So the more of these plants that they eat, the oranger the yolk will get. So you can get really dark orange yolks if you feed something with a lot of these xanthophylls in them, or you can get paler eggs. You can even get white egg yolks if you feed no xanthophylls. You feed a plant, no feed any plants with xanthophylls at all. There's not anything wrong with the nutrition difference in these. These are all just basically some people like darker orange and some people like yellower eggs. So it depends on that. If you want a darker orange egg, one of the things that really is high in xanthophylls is marigold petals. So if you feed your chickens marigold petals, or you buy feed that's pre-made, and sometimes some of the pre-made feed will say we've added marigold petals to this feed, this chicken feed, it's going to cause your chicken's eggs to be a darker, more oranger yolk. So if you want them that way, and maybe you want them for your own consumption, or you think that's going to help you sell eggs, some other people are going to think that's more desirable than a yellow egg. You want to feed more than something like marigold petals. Corn has a decent amount in it, but corn level also varies from where the corn's grown. So different parts of the world and country are going to have different levels of xanthophylls in their corn. So that's why if you travel and you eat yolks a lot and they're all being just fed corn, sometimes different parts of the world or different parts of, if you come to the mainland, different parts of the US even here have different colored eggs at the restaurants and things. When you order eggs, the yolks will be different colors. Well, the other thing I hear a lot is that chickens can lay more than one egg a day. That is definitely, I'm going to get to that. It's false. Other people think that you need a rooster to cause eggs. You have eggs. You do not. If you have a rooster, the main thing you're going to get is this picture here, which some of you who have chickens may be experienced. If you don't collect your eggs frequently enough, especially if it's warm outside, they're going to, if you have a rooster around, he's fertilizing those eggs and they're going to start to develop. This is what we call a blood ring. So this is when an embryo started to develop, then you collected the eggs, you cooled them down by taking them away from the hen, or you put them in a refrigerator, you killed the embryo. And what happens is the blood that started to develop all settles at one level, and you'll see this inside the egg. You can see this if you candle the eggs by putting like light on them. You can actually see the blood ring, and that's usually this is an embryo that died in the first several days of development. So if you do have roosters and you don't want to sell eggs or eat eggs, that you need to collect your eggs 2-3 times a day, hopefully, so that you're getting them out of there and getting them in the refrigerator before they even have a chance to start developing any blood. Because if you have a rooster, he's going to hopefully be doing his job, which part of that is to breed the hens. So you're going to get that. You cannot get, again, more than one egg a day. Show you that. Both those are false, because this is basically the egg laying cycle. Chickens start out, basically, they're going to release the yolk from the oviduct inside the reproductive tract. It takes about a half an hour. Then it takes about 3 hours for the egg white to form around that yolk. And then it takes about 1 hour for them to put the membranes around that yolk and egg white. And then the longest part of that is when the chicken's reproductive tract, it takes 20 hours to form the shell on the outside of that egg. And then the last thing that happens is they do the bloom, or what we call the cuticle, as the egg comes out. So if you add all these up, that's 3.5, 4.5, 24.5 roughly hours. Generally, chickens are going to lay eggs somewhere between 20 to 26 hours from one egg to the next, roughly in that area. So if you get an extra egg, it's because maybe your chicken laid an egg 20 hours or 26 hours from the last egg today, and tomorrow it lays one at 20 hours. You get, it seems like there's 2 eggs in a day, but maybe there are technically if you think of 24 hours, but that's not, they're not laying like 2 eggs within a 24-hour period on a regular basis. It happens occasionally. The other thing that people see is sometimes they get eggs that are double weird shaped eggs that have eggs inside of eggs. And usually what that happens is somewhere an egg got stopped, went backwards in the reproductive tract and got another shell and egg put around it. I've seen pictures of those where you get little eggs, fully formed eggs inside of a bigger egg. And that's because that's what happened. Something went wrong in the reproductive tract here and it didn't get pushed out like it's supposed to. Again, so that you don't need roosters, as I said, the roosters are not needed. You don't need them for egg production. You only need the sun. The sun or light or electric light is what's going to cause your chickens to lay, because that stimulates their hormones in their brain that talk to their reproductive tract and give off the hormones to cause that egg to be released. He doesn't do anything except make a lot of noise and maybe attack you. A lot of people think in certain places think that he's protecting the roosters or the hens. I don't think you guys have very many predators to deal with there, maybe brought in predators more than anything else. But here, I usually tell people the only thing he's doing to protect them is he's the first sacrificial chicken. He'll run up to a coyote around where I'm from and get eaten first, and the hens will get away. But he's not really protecting them. They can protect themselves. They'll get away from predators. They're not. They don't need a rooster to keep them safe. Generally. So now I'm getting started in the intro. So if you guys are doing a good thing coming to this talk, if you already have chickens, maybe you're trying to get, you've had some issues and you're trying to find stuff out. If you're thinking of getting chickens or you just want to learn more, it's a good place to go to accurate resources because you need to, when I tell people when they're thinking of getting chickens or already have chickens, you need to plan for everything that could possibly go wrong because it's probably going to in your life of owning chickens. You're gonna have to deal with what you're gonna do with manure. If you are housing them in a coop or something, once you're getting rid of that, or even how you're dealing with manure around possibly around your yard, depending on how many chickens you have, if that's become an issue. What you're gonna do if you have to kill a bird, if it gets injured or sick, or if your birds die, what you're doing with them. Are you gonna bury them? Are you gonna burn them? What are you allowed to do in your area? You think about housing of some sort. You need to have some sort of structure. It doesn't have to be that they're living in that all the time, but having something that maybe if the weather's bad, they can get out of the weather. Predator control, like I said, I don't think you guys have too many predators to deal with, like, as they do in other places. But the one thing I do say, if you do have any type of predator that was going to eat your chickens, when you get chickens, you're going to learn about all the things that want to eat chickens that are around you because they're going to show up because everything likes to eat chickens and eggs, not just us. So they will, if you have things even as small as a rats around, rats are going to start appearing, and then some people think, well, the rats are maybe just going to go after the eggs, but sometimes if rats get big enough, they go after baby chicks and eat baby chicks too. So seeing that happen, so you got to be prepared for those kind of things. If you're going to try and make this into something where you're trying to make money off, know the rules in Hawaii, what they are for selling eggs. I'm going to kind of show you some of them, but I would recommend following up on that because I'm only just somewhat familiar with them from the last few weeks looking at stuff. But know the rules. So you don't get in trouble from selling eggs the wrong way. And then finding a good source of birds is also important. Knowing where you're getting your birds from, making sure you're getting healthy birds. Because chickens do not show that they're sick until they're really sick. So you may think someone who's selling you birds may be thinking they're selling you nice, healthy birds, but if they don't ever know exactly or aren't doing some disease testing or anything else or making sure their birds are healthy, they may be selling you a bird that in a couple of weeks is sick. And if you already had chickens, it's going to make all the rest of your chickens sick as well. We have more information on our website. There's a national extension website called Extension. They have a specific section on small and backyard flocks where they give publications and some other webinars. They also have an Ask the Expert section where if you put a question in there, it goes to some poultry expert like me around the country, wherever they are, if they've signed up to be an Ask the Expert, that will try and help answer your questions as well. If your local extension agents don't know the answer, they can also go on there and ask those questions and help find those as well. But generally going to websites or resources that are involved with hopefully with the government agencies are going to give you more reliable stuff, information, our extensions stuff. Going to the internet is a risky operation. Going to blogs and forums and things may seem great. Sometimes they have good information on there, but sometimes people say things that they think are true or right, and it's actually kind of dangerous or just not good to do. Back a few years, everybody was on this MotherEarthNews.com website, the real popular place for backyard chicken, and there's a lot of stuff on there with misinformation or wrong that people were saying on there. So be careful on the internet. I also say be careful talking to people who used to have chickens. Why they used to have chickens and they don't have chickens anymore, but it's probably the first question I'd ask them, where did all their chickens die and they just didn't know how to do it right? Because you want to get from somebody I probably would get more information from somebody who still has chickens and is maybe having a good successful attempt at it. People who know people have chickens isn't a good thing either. Don't go to Uncle so-and-so who has a relative who has chickens, because why doesn't Uncle so-and-so have the chickens? He maybe doesn't know what he's talking about as much as the person who actually has the chickens. And there are a lot of how-to books and magazines that you can find on Amazon and the feed stores and bookstores. Look at who the author is and maybe do some research on who that author is, because anyone nowadays can publish a book. Any of you could publish a book if you wanted to on chickens. All you have to do is find an internet publisher who's willing to take your money and they'll publish your book and start selling it on Amazon, or where you can start selling on Amazon or wherever else. So you don't know necessarily that it's a reputable source of information. Again, so just be careful of that. If you are getting, I asked the other day if you see situations where you guys maybe are mainly getting birds. You said there's mainly a couple places on the islands that you guys can get birds, and then otherwise you might be mail ordering them. If you are mail ordering, do try and get it from someplace that's part of what we call the National Poultry Improvement Plan hatchery. Those hatcheries generally are disease testing their birds, and are selling you healthy chicks that you hopefully don't have to worry about too much doing with them. If you are getting them from a local breeder, you may ask them if they have any disease testing that's maybe required by the state of Hawaii, or what's going on to make sure that the birds are healthy and not sick. Or just ask around who they've sold birds to before if they had a good experience with them as well. I don't usually recommend any of these other sources buying chickens from, because you just don't know if the birds are healthy. People again may be thinking they're doing something nice and selling, or being honest and selling them, but you just don't know where they're coming from, and you may get a bird, especially nowadays. And I'll talk about this in disease talk with avian influenza out there. Someone may think they're selling you a good bird and then give you a bird that has avian influenza. So be real careful because you don't want to be dealing with that. There are lots of mail order hatcheries. These are just some of them. I've had success with all these ones, and there's a lot more out there. You guys are going to have to deal with the one thing of ordering from any of these, that they are going to get shipped in the mail, and they are going to be stressed when they get to you. The first thing you need to do when you get a baby chick is not feed it. The first thing you need to do is get it on water. They need to drink, because they're probably going to be dehydrated a little bit when they get to you guys out in Hawaii. And if you give them food first, what happens is they put all that dry food in their mouth, into their crop, and it can get impacted, and then they can get the food stuck there, and then it's going to eventually cause them to die. So you want to get them water in there so they get lubricated, that feed go down into their gut and not just get stuck in their crop. So make sure they get on water first. It's really tempting to be like, oh, they must be super hungry. But they'll be fine. Most chickens don't usually they'll eat day of hatch, but they don't need food for the first 2 to 3 days, because they have the yolk inside of them, and they're living off that yolk for the first couple of days. After about 2 to 3 days, they have to have food. I'm not saying not to feed them, but I'm saying that's why they can survive in the air going through the U.S. mail to get to you, because they're going to have they have food reserves built into their bodies. If you do get new birds, I recommend quarantine your birds for at least 3 weeks from any other birds or chickens you already have. That means not in the same building, not in the same pen, not in the same area. Far away from the other birds you have. Don't let them interact with them. You want to monitor those new birds for any disease symptoms, especially respiratory stuff. Listen to them, see if they're wheezing or making coughing or other noises. Chickens, especially older birds, you can see it easy, are like little kids. When they get a respiratory problem, if you look at their wings, and their wings look really dirty in one spot, it's because they're wiping their nose on their wings, like kids wipe on their arms. So if you see these little dark spots especially on a light colored feathered bird, might mean that they're having nasal discharge and they're wiping their face on their wings to kind of get the snot off of them. Handling sick birds and quarantine birds after your other birds is important. Go to your healthy birds you know are healthy first, then go to the other birds that you don't know if they're healthy. Wash your hands is very important, not only for keeping disease off your birds, but for your own food safety. And we'll go over this a little in this talk. I tell everybody to assume that every chicken has salmonella. So just assume they do. So wash your hands after you touch a baby chick, your eggs, of a grown-up chicken. And that's important for kids as well, because kids love to touch baby chicks. The other thing about baby chicks for kids is little kids all like to take a little baby chick and put it up to their face. Don't let them kiss it, because they're going to ingest salmonella possibly. Also, I tell kids, chickens like to peck shiny objects. So if you put a baby chick or full-grown chicken up to your face, what is shiny on your face? Your eyeball. So you're taking the risk that they're going to peck you right in the eye, and that's not going to feel good. So usually I wouldn't take them too close to your face. Again, disinfecting your boots or having special shoes also to go around any new birds or your own birds is probably a good idea. And then I say this last thing, don't commingle birds of significant different ages. People always ask me what that is. Don't put baby chicks with your older birds. A lot of people think, oh, well, my hens are going to take care of them. They're a good mama. Well, they may be, but chickens are also omnivores. So if they are hungry, they may eat your little babies or peck at them and kill them. So usually keep them away until they're big enough to defend themselves. is usually what I'm saying, and also have their immune system developed enough that they can handle being around an older bird that might be carrying a disease or a sickness, because just like us, a lot of us maybe carry the flu or something else and not actually acting like we're sick. But then if you go around an elderly person or a young kid or baby and you cough, they can get it a lot easier and maybe have the symptoms that we aren't showing. So same thing happens in animals. So again, one of the important things I mentioned is late physiology in your chickens. If you want your chickens to lay eggs, it's important to have increasing photo period. If the days are getting longer, your chickens are going to lay eggs. If the days are getting shorter, your chickens are going to stop laying eggs. So I didn't look up this. I should have before this talk to see what the average time is in Hawaii for day laying. But even little minute changes can cause them to go in and out of lay. During the early phase of their life, when they're young birds, the pullet is a chicken that is not laying eggs yet. You really don't want the day length to be increasing during that period. You want it to remain constant or actually decreasing, because you don't want to stimulate their reproductive tract until they are ready to lay eggs, and that's usually around 17 weeks of age. So when they get above 17 weeks of age, you can start making the day lengths get longer. 12 hours of light is considered the threshold for a chicken to lay eggs. So if they're exposed more than 12 hours of light a day, their body's going to think they're ready to start laying eggs. It's that time of year to lay eggs. So if it's longer than 12 hours a day, you're going to stimulate them to lay eggs. So that can be hard if you don't have a structure for baby chicks to keep them in and keep them maybe darker than for only giving light for 11 hours a day. It becomes a thing. But the reason I say this a lot is I've gotten a lot of phone calls over the years with people who didn't do anything to control that. And they tell me my chickens are now 2 years old and they've never laid an egg. And I'm like, well, did you control the light when they were young? And they say no. And that's probably the main reason that they didn't, is because they messed up this whole reproductive tract development, and they're just not going to do stuff right. Again, if you want your chickens to lay eggs year round, you need to keep it above that 12-hour threshold. So I'm not sure if it ever gets way shorter days there in Hawaii or not, but if it does, you need to keep them longer. 15 to 16 hours a day. If you keep giving them that much light a day, they're going to lay eggs for you year round. The difference that people have to make a decision in this is if you live in a place that gets less, but they would stop laying certain times of the year. If you do this and you keep them laying year round, you're shortening the total egg laying life of your chickens. So you're gonna have to get new chickens sooner. If you let them shut down, they'll go into a molt and they won't lay eggs until the day length starts increasing again, and then they'll lay eggs for a longer total period, but you won't get eggs during that couple of months or whatever, or however long the day lengths are shorter. But this is a problem here in our end of the world. And again, I should have looked up Hawaii stuff before this. I can do that maybe before tomorrow's talk and update this a little for you all. But everyone around in the mainland gets chicks in April or May, and they're going to be 18 weeks old out here. So if you look like here in our Texas thing, what happens is I just said you don't want chicks having increasing day length when they're young, and that's what happens here. And then in the winter, when they're getting ready to lay eggs, we start getting shorter day lengths. And the reason this happens is because the people who all the hatcheries don't want to ship chicks when it's colder weather. So they ship chicks when it's warmer out. So that's why they're shipping them over here in this time, because then they don't have to worry about chicks getting cold stress being shipped by the U.S. Postal Service. Again, I told you like decreasing. So everybody in our area, what you should get is if you have light like this, you should be getting them in this time of period, because by the time they're 18 weeks old, natural light is already going up, so you don't really have to do much, and they're going to come into lay naturally, and you don't have to do as much light control. Again, that's what's important. If you don't have to do that, whether this is a simple, or this is from a commercial egg layer, but you can do something like this. So if you see for the first 8 weeks of their life, you're kind of decreasing the light a little bit. You may start with full light, and then slowly decrease so you get below that 12-hour threshold. And then you keep them around that 12-hour threshold till they get to 17, 18 weeks of age, and you start increasing it. And then once you get up to 16 hours, you can keep it there for the rest of their lives, and they'll lay eggs forever. But this is, again, what you should do if you really want to control how your birds are going to start laying. This can be done by having a fancy thing like this, or even just a cheap little lamp timer to add a couple hours. And it doesn't have to be a lot of light. So if you have a coop or someplace that they're coming in at night, you basically put a light bulb, if you can, or something that's out there on a timer. One light bulb's enough just to extend that amount of light that they're getting exposed to each day, and they'll stay and lay for you. It doesn't have to be like you're lighting up your whole yard or something like that, or the whole world out there. It's just a little bit of light's enough to stimulate them. One thing you should think about having in your somewhere out there if you want to collect eggs and make your life easy is some sort of nest box. It doesn't have to be like this. There's lots of versions where people have made nest boxes, made them out of 5-gallon buckets on their side. Lots of different ways to make things to do that. One thing, if you do get these ones that I like to point out, is this is a perch, yes, but this is also supposed to be after the chickens have laid their eggs in here. This folds up, and that's not just for like shipping purposes. That's because if it folds up, it's supposed to what we call a nest exclusion device. So it stops the chickens from being able to go in here. Because you only want your chickens going in your nest when they're laying eggs. You don't want them sitting here like this girl here and just sitting in there, because what happens if they sit in there for too long or at night is they use the bathroom in there, so they get your eggs dirty with that. And two, they may break the eggs, crack them, and then they make the other eggs dirty as well. So you want them to just lay their eggs and get out, and then keep them out of there until you get the eggs out yourself and go and collect the eggs. You also see a bunch of chickens down here in our pen here where they're all done under here. Chickens like to lay in a dark area, so it's probably a darker shadow spot down here, and that's when they're going to floor lay down here. If you don't want the floor lay, you don't want your nest box being as bright as this is, where the sun's pouring in, because we have some windows over to the left here. That's letting all this light in here, because that's going to make it less desirable. They want to go to a dark, secluded place and lay their eggs. That one way to do that is to put, like we did, this little diagram showing a black plastic curtain that they can jump under and get up in there. Another way I've actually done it is to tape up just a trash bag on here, and then make some slits in it. And then if you train your chickens that they can push through that little slit, they'll learn to go in there and come in and out of it themselves. It makes it nice and dark in there, and it can help maybe prevent floor laying. Because if your chickens start laying on the floor or in your yard on the ground, it's a learned behavior, and once they do it, they're never going to stop. The only thing you can do is maybe try and discourage it by putting something in the hole that they laid their eggs in. But generally what happens with chickens, you do that, you put a cinder block or something in that hole, they move 2 feet over, dig a new hole and lay eggs in it, so they don't stop. So, and then they teach each other how to do it too. So once you get one doing it, your whole flock's going to start learning to lay on the ground, and then you're going to have an Easter egg hunt every day you go to try and find your eggs. So it's the best thing is to do is prevent it by giving them a good, nice nest box that they want to lay in rather than lay on the floor somewhere. Again, I say housing's important. I know a lot of people just like, and I've been to Hawaii once in my life, and I was on Kauai and I saw chickens just everywhere. So I know that sometimes they're just running around, and that's how people maybe like to do it. They do that here too. But you need to have somewhere for extreme weather conditions to have them get in to protect your birds, whether that be rain or being cold or hot, then whatever. Maybe you have some extremes there. Predator protection if you have predators to deal with that. But the main thing for you all is a place for them to lay their eggs, so that you can collect their eggs. You have nice clean eggs, hopefully, and that eggs you're not searching for. You're gonna need someplace to brood your chickens. The babies, if you're getting baby chicks, you need to keep them warm. Chicks cannot keep themselves warm for the first 2 to 3 weeks of life. You have to have a heat lamp or something else that's going to keep a brooder. Something's going to keep them warm. After that time period, they can self-regulate. They start feathering out, and they can self-regulate their own body temperature, so they don't need a heat lamp as much anymore. And then again, this last thing I say on there is maximize efficiency. If you're trying to get eggs, having someplace with a nest box, you're going to get more eggs because you're not going to have to search for them. You're not going to not find eggs that they laid. So this is one little structure. I show this picture. This is a terrible setup for chickens. There's lots of junk around it, lots of vegetation. This is all just going to encourage rodents and other things to live in there. This is not really upkept very well. This has a metal roof on it, which can be nice, but this metal roof goes really low to where the chickens are. So if you have chickens in here, this is going to take the heat of the sun, and it's going to make it really hot in here. So if it gets hot out, you may be heat stressing your birds by having them in here, unless you have insulation between this metal roof and the inside where the birds are. And if you use insulation of any type, anywhere on where the birds can reach it, you need to make sure you have a piece of plywood or a piece of metal or something else between them, because they will eat fiberglass, spray foam, foam board, whatever they can peck at, they will eat it. And then I get phone calls a lot where people are, well, is my chicken going to die? And I say, well, maybe. You wouldn't want to eat that stuff, so probably not good for them either. So it's a possibility. Just try and keep them away from it. This one shows again, you don't have to build big structures. You're just showing ideas, like concepts here. If you do build a permanent structure, the best thing to do is make sure there's no vegetation, probably 5 feet from it. This one was probably more done by the chickens than by someone spraying any pesticides or anything. Because if you do this, it discourages rodents, it discourages bugs, it discourages if you have snakes around, things like that, from getting near your chickens because they don't want to be exposed. They want to hide in the grass and not be found. So if you have a bare spot here outside, they won't go near your chickens. This one shows some things like giving good ventilation where you can raise or close these depending on what the weather's like. Again, the metal is nice for sturdiness, but if there's no insulation between this, you're just going to cook the chickens on the other side. So be aware of that. This was a really fancy one someone built. This one has natural convection going on, so they have vents up here, so the hot air will rise and go out, and you'll get some cool air being pulled in, and you'll get that air circulation just naturally happening. It also has these little things on here, so it doesn't allow the sun or rain to come in, but it does allow the air to go in. And again, they built this out of concrete, so nothing can dig under it if you have predators like neighbors' dogs or something like that trying to get into your chickens. But things like this that you can find on the internet are also okay, or simple. They have little cages if you want to cage them. This one's a bigger one. This one can only hold 3 to 4 chickens. A lot of people get these and they think they can put a bunch of chickens. There's no way this holds more than 3 or 4 chickens in this setup because there's not enough space for them all. You can hold more in this one. This one's a good one if all you want is a nest box and a place to shut them in at night, because there's a hole in the back of this thing. They get in these nest boxes, lay their eggs, come in here for the bad weather, or come in and out. Really like fun. So my chickens will just put the trees. May not be as big problem as there is here, but lots of predators live in the trees. So I'm always like, if the babies come from the trees at night, you don't have to worry what else is eating them up there. The other thing is if you don't provide a nice place for your chickens to lay eggs, chickens will find the nicest place that they want to live at. So if your neighbors have a better setup than you, your chickens may move next. Yeah, so if you just think about if your chickens may want to go next door, live with somebody else, if they have better feed or better shelter or better nest boxes, they may go lay all their eggs next door. Chickens, it's been known to happen where somebody has 20 chickens and then one day they have 5 and their neighbor got the extra 15 because it's showing up at their house. So you may see that and be like, why am those chickens look like mine down the road? And they actually probably are. If you do have any type of structure or someplace you're putting, or even your yard, think about how the drainage goes. This is showing you inside of a house with higher ground. You don't want a bunch of muddy, your chickens having nowhere to get out. So if, even in your yard, you want to probably have some perching areas for them to jump up, because if they have nowhere to get out and they're just walking around in mud all the time, it affects their feet, and their feet can get infections and things like that. And if you get lameness in them, you're not going to eat, and they're not going to lay you eggs. So you're not going to, or where your chickens are spending their time at, that all the water is going to run in and just pool in there, and you're going to have a real muddy. If I lose you guys again, I'm sorry. It says my internet connection is being unstable at the moment, so I'll keep trying to get back to you all if I lose you again. If you have trees, it's good to have trees that are nice and tall with lots of plants, so they leaves on them, so they it allows airflow there. You don't really want bushes or anything that's low that's going to block the airflow, because that's not doing anything but giving places for rodents and maybe wild birds living next to your chicken. So you don't want that. A lot of people like in the main out here where I live like to use these chicken tractor things. I'm not sure if they're that popular there or not. Where you put them in and you move it around your yard. These work. This has way too many chickens. Again, you should have maybe 3, because even if you're pulling this around your yard, they are going to eat the grass down really fast, and you have to have enough space for them wherever you're pulling them around. And they will eat the vegetation down, so they are great for that. They will eat it down to basically dirt, but you have to have enough by the time you're going to pull it back to where they started, that the grass is growing back, and that may not be a problem there. Grass may grow a lot faster there. But if not, you're just gonna have a big mud pit of a yard or a dry lot, because they're gonna eat all the grass down and you won't have any vegetation. So you need to be able to move it around enough. And when you are doing this, I'll show you a couple of examples. Make sure you're building this to the size you can actually move, because these things can throw heavy. It's kind of, you can see in the background here, this one's probably attached to a tractor, but they're gonna drag it. So because it's made of wood, it's probably pretty heavy. But you can make all different types out of different things. You can use PVC pipe, hog panels like this, chicken wire. You can make them out of wood, any shape you want. Just make sure this one is sometimes popular, mainly in where it snows a lot, because it can handle a snow load because it's got a bunch of metal roof. I don't like this one here in Texas, and this may not be good where you are either. Again, because it's got a metal roof that's right next to the chickens. And if you close this here in Texas where it gets really hot, this is more of a chicken oven. We cook our chickens. If you put them in this thing, they're all going to die of heat stress really fast. So just be aware, again, the building material you're using, you want to keep your chickens comfortable. But all these different things work. These are lighter and easier to move around. You can build them as big as small. It just depends on how many chickens you want to be able to have in them. Again, how much land you have, predators, rain, ground, moisture, think about that. And if you are raising baby chicks, you can't really raise them in these things unless you're putting a heat lamp somewhere in here for them to be inside of. Kind of the difference between the two of those is if you have a permanent housing, you're going to have to deal with litter. If you're letting them run around your yard and or using a mobile structure, you're fertilizing your yard somewhat. Be aware though, if they're running around your yard, pooping everywhere, they are spreading salmonella around your whole yard. So if you're letting your kids go out there and play in it barefoot or they're playing and digging in the ground where your chickens are, they're taking a big chance that they're going to put salmonella in their mouth if they're going from like ground to their mouth touching dirt and then touching their face in the same spot your chickens are. But you can control things a lot better in permanent housing, but you just have to do a little more work if you're doing free ranging or mobile to keep your birds comfortable. So I just mentioned salmonella, in case you aren't familiar. Salmonella is a bacteria. It basically inhabits the intestinal tract of lots of animals, including birds. Chickens are non-symptomatic carriers, so it does not make them sick. So they have it in them, but they don't get sick from it. There's about 2,000 varieties of salmonella. So people say, why can't we just vaccinate against it? Well, because there's 2,000 types, and that's going to be it's really hard to make a vaccine that's going to cover 2,000 types of bacteria. So it can cause really bad gastrointestinal distress in humans. So if you get salmonella, you're most likely going to end up, the best case scenario for you is you're going to end up in the bathroom for 2 weeks. The worst case scenario is if you're someone who's susceptible to this stuff, you could end up in the hospital. If you're older or you're a younger kid, a lot of them end up in hospitals because they get so sick from it and they get dehydrated and things like that from having so much diarrhea. So it's important to have proper hygiene of when you're working around chickens, washing your hands, but it's also important for the eggs that you're eating and or chicken that you're eating. You need to cook your eggs and chicken to 160 degrees, at least if you want to kill off all the salmonella. This becomes a thing where people like to eat runny eggs or runny yolks or runny whites or runny scrambled eggs. If you're not cooking them all the way to hard, you're taking a risk. Just know you're taking that risk that you may get salmonella. It's the same ththing people do when they eat rare steaks. You're taking the chance that maybe you're going to get bacteria because you didn't cook it all the way through. You might get a coli or something like that. But if you don't want to take any risk, make sure you cook them as much as you do. And I'm one of those people who doesn't necessarily cook all my eggs all the way through either, because sometimes I like a runny yolk for breakfast. So take the risk. But especially with backyard chickens, you're taking a little bit, possibly more of a risk of that. To prevent it, the CDC says basically you should wash your hands and supervise children or use send up a hand sanitizer after handling eggs or chickens. This one right here, people laugh at me. Some of the talks I give when I say don't let your birds inside. I say this is listed on there, and I've had personal experience with this. I had a lady a few years back call me up and was telling me that she's having a problem with chicken mites, so an external parasite, that they were all in her couch in her house. And I'm like, well, that's odd because they like to live where the chickens are. And I talked to her for an hour on the phone and trying to figure out what was going on. By the end of the hour, she finally admitted to me that she lets her chickens live in her house, and she puts, because you can buy these on the internet, puts little chicken diapers on her chickens. So she has chickens wearing diapers running around her house. And I'm like, well, the only way you're going to get the mites out of your house is to get your chickens out of your house. And she was like, oh, but they're my babies. And I was like, well, I don't know what to tell you, because you're going to treat them and they're going to keep coming back as long as you have chickens in the house. So people do let their birds in their house. But if you are doing that, you're taking a risk of spreading the salmonella around. If you are cleaning your poultry equipment, like your feeders, your waterers, anything like that, don't bring them in your kitchen to clean them. Clean them outside with a hose or something. If you're bringing them into your kitchen counter and you're spraying, it's just like the reason we tell you not to wash your whole birds or your chicken parts is because if they have salmonella, you're spraying that water and you're possibly spraying it all over your countertop. So then you're maybe touching that and getting it infecting the rest of your food. Again, don't let little kids around birds without supervision just because they love to kiss them and do things like that, and they'll get sick that way. And then manure in your house, if you can make sure you change your shoes, just don't track manure around your house if you can, because then you're bringing that E. coli in there. So when you're having your eggs that you're going to get from your chickens, It's important to handle those too as well, because the microorganisms on your eggs are going to get there from the birds themselves, possibly from their nest box, possibly from the dirt and dust out there from your own hands spreading from egg to egg. A lot of it comes from organic material that's adhered, so that either they broke an egg in the nest box and got on another egg, or there's feces stuck to it, which happens. I'm going to talk about cleaning eggs. If you want to clean your eggs, you don't have to clean your eggs. If you cook your eggs all the way, like I told you, you're going to kill off everything. But if you are going to clean your eggs, there's a proper way to do it. Temperature and a little bit pH of the water is important. The cooling rate of your eggs, the best thing to do, and I'll show you some pictures of this, is to get your eggs in a refrigerator as soon as possible after you collect them, because that slows any bacterial growth that is on them. And then you should maintain that refrigeration in below 45 degrees until you are going to eat those eggs. And that includes if you're selling them. That's the best practice to keep them cold until the next person can get them into their refrigerator as well. One way to keep your eggs clean is changing. If you're using litter in a nest box, is to keep that clean and change it regularly, because that's going to get them clean. If you have enough litter in there, like these are just pine shavings in here, your eggs should be nice and clean. If you don't have enough litter, like in this nest box where you can see the bottom of the nest box, what can happen is that's more chance not there's not much cushion in there, and one egg could break, and then the chickens roll the other eggs, and they get all this adhering litter stuck to them and yolk albumin stuck to them, and that can increase the amount of bacteria that you're going to get on these eggs. I would probably just throw these eggs out and not even try and eat them. But some people don't want to get rid of any egg and try and do stuff. But again, if you were careful and you just cracked these out in a bowl and cooked them really well, you probably are safe. I talked about the nest exclusion device. That's what this picture showing here. If you have nest boxes, you need for every 4 to 5 birds you have, you need one nest box. They're going to share nest boxes. They like to lay where other chickens lay, but you need enough space for 4 to 5 birds. So if you have 10 birds, you need 2 nest boxes, and so on as you multiply that out. So just have enough nest box space for them, and then they're going to lay their eggs in there if you give them a nice nest box, and you'll be able to collect your eggs easy every day. One of the things people have started to use is these rollout type nest boxes instead of these hand collect ones. You got to reach in there. Rollout nests discourage egg eating, and they also discourage or reduce the amount of getting the eggs contaminated, because what happens is they lay their egg in here and it rolls out the back or the front, so then the chicken doesn't have access to that egg anymore. These are just 2 different types of astroturf mat that you can buy from a lot of the internet websites or feed stores and things like that sell these. You can cut them to size. The one thing I will talk about these is if you have older hens and you're raising them and you have shavings in your nest box, the hens will not lay eggs most likely if you just switch it to this. You have to kind of raise them on it so that they're used to it. If this is the only thing they've ever known to lay an egg on, they're going to lay their eggs on it just like it's a pile of shavings or straw or whatever else. But if you switch it out on them, and this is from my own personal experience as well, they look at it like, what in the world is that stuff? And they won't lay an egg in here at all. So you'll cause them to start laying eggs elsewhere. Hens, again, you get them custody, then they're going to be that. The good thing about these ones, if you use these, is that you can take these out. You can scrub them down and clean them off if they do poop on them or break an egg in there. You can't clean out shavings really that easy. You can just have to take all the shavings out. But if your nest box floor gets dirty, then it's dirty. This will at least protect the floor. This is a rollout nest in one of our barns that we converted. The one thing, if you leave this gap too high, if you're trying to make them, the chickens will reach out and try and pull that egg back in. That happens a lot because they actually made ours too tall. The chickens reach and try and pull their egg in because a lot of chickens want to sit on the egg and they're like, hey, give me my egg back, kind of thing. So, but they will do it. But it just kind of shows you the chicken's feed itself is pretty dirty from walking in his pen, but this nest pad's pretty clean besides feathered. But we can always pull that out as well and they're clean. Again, you can buy these. This number on here is an old price, so don't hold me to that, how much they cost, wherever this came from. But again, they can be clean size. Also, the hens won't throw like in shavings, they scratch in there and stuff when they're getting ready to lay and stuff. So they throw the shavings out and you have to replace them regularly. If you affix this to the bottom or to your nest box with a zip tie or something, they aren't going to be able to kick this out. So you don't have to worry about constantly replacing shavings. Okay, getting into eggs themselves. The shell structure of an egg, they have pores on them. If you didn't know this, just like our skin has pores. Domestic chickens' pores are unbranched, so there's a solid pore that goes straight through the egg. Other species of birds have more branching structures. An average chicken egg has somewhere between 7,000 up to 17,000, 20,000 pores on it. Most of those pores are at the large end of the egg. So this is a electron microscope view of an egg. So you can see this is the cuticle, that little bloom that gets put on that. So it's like a little, it covers over that pore if it's there. Then you have basically this crack that goes from the outside, this giant hole that goes from here all the way down. This is the pore and goes inside into the inside of the egg, where then there's those membranes on the inside. So the cuticle is a waxy covering that covers that egg as it comes out, as I talked about earlier. It allows exchange of gases across there, but it's also one of the primary barriers for letting things like salmonella get in, those bacteria get into the inside of the egg. This becomes important. Again, here's a picture of that showing that cuticle and stuff, a little closer up view. This is a pore again. Looks kind of like a rock out in maybe the Utah desert or somewhere. But if you were a bacteria, you'd be closer to a little size of like one of these little specks here. So that shows you how big of a hole this is for them to be able to get in. So if there's no cuticle blocking this, it's a giant hole for bacteria to jump in and get into the inside of the egg. One thing that happens with that cuticle is that as the chickens age, the amount of cuticle and the quality of the cuticle that they put on that egg decreases. So when you have older hens in your flock, the cuticle isn't as good, and it's not as good as a protective barrier as when they were younger. So young hens wear a nice uniform, covers most of the egg, and it's really thick. As you can see this picture here, the older ones get much thinner, so the cuticle's much more raggedy compared to how thick this younger chicken's one is. We also did some experiments to show cuticle coverage between white and brown eggs. 10 of the brown eggs in our study had a little more better coverage overall. But they also get, as they get older, these birds get very patchy. These are an old bird, so it's very patchy in both white and brown birds. You get a lot of exposure that they can get there when they get older. To kind of show this visually, we basically dyed some eggs with special dye, dipped in this red food coloring dye that we had. And you can see here, this is a young bird. You see how evenly coated the red is. A middle-aged bird. There's some patchiness here. It's maybe hard to see on your screens. I don't know how easy to see, but there's patchiness all here where it's not uniform and not as dark colored as this. And then an old bird, all these pale regions on here are basically where the cuticle is not anymore covering anything. So all these pores out here are exposed just for anything to go into the inside of the egg, because there's no cuticle protecting them. So if you have an old chicken, she may still be laying eggs, but she's not putting a cuticle to protect you as much on there. And then when you wash eggs, as I talked about, one thing you do if you wash and scrub them is you're taking that cuticle off. So even if you have a young bird, you're turning your egg from this to probably something closer to this, depending on how much you're scrubbing it. So be aware of that. This is also from the inside of the egg. So all these blue spots indicate where the dye came through the pores. So this shows you in an older bird that didn't have any cuticle covering on these birds. All that's basically places bacteria could have come into the inside of that egg. Where in a younger bird, none of the red stuff is coming through. There's one spot there, but most of it doesn't get through the egg, the younger birds. Again, washing will remove that bloom, as I just said. If you're going to wash your eggs, you need to wash them properly. There are a lot of things on the internet that show you basically dipping eggs or submerging them. Please do not do that. It's the worst way to wash your eggs, because think of this: if you have one egg with a little bit of feces on it, a little bit of poop on it, you put it in a bucket of water with all your clean eggs that are not that dirty of eggs. You just turn every egg in there into a dirty egg that now has poop water all over it. So it's really going to increase your contamination if you do that. So the proper way to do it is to spray your eggs off by using, if you have like a sink sprayer or a colander that you can put under your sink, washing them that way. So as the water is going on your eggs and it's running away from your eggs and going down the drain and not going onto other eggs. There are some approved egg detergents out there for washing them, but mainly if you're washing the conditions of the water are important. They should be 20 degrees warmer than the inside of the temperature of your egg when you collect your eggs. So an egg that's freshly laid is about 90 degrees or about 70 to 90 degrees. So you need pretty hot water. You want hot water that's going to be, so because what that does is those pores, you have those membranes on the inside of that egg I talked about. If you have cold water, in cold weather, things constrict, they get smaller. So if you put cold water on the egg, you're going to cause those membranes to get smaller on the inside, and that basically acts like a good suction, and it sucks anything in those pores or close to the pores into the inside of the egg. So you'll be contaminating your egg. So if you use warm water, that doesn't happen. Here's an example of an egg detergent. That's I think you can buy this on the internet, but even on the label of it, if you look, it does say that the wash water should be between 100, almost 115 degrees. So really hot water to wash the eggs in, but and then you dilute the stuff out and you can use it to like a soap or on the eggs, clean them. If you are washing, you should rinse them off after using any detergent to get all that off the egg. But if you are doing that, make sure that the rinse water is even hotter than the wash water, because you don't want that constriction thing to happen. One thing we'll talk about is that you can use an approved sanitizer on your eggs if you want to kill off any bacteria that's left after washing them. That can be a chlorine bleach solution, or it can be a quaternary ammonia that's out there. And then you can spray them off, but you want to make sure that they're dry before you put them in cartons or anything like that, because that decrease any bacteria reforming. This is a quaternary ammonia that's out there. One thing to note, I showed this here. This one says the active ingredient in this quaternary ammonia this sanitizer. I think this one's more of a bleach one. Oh, it's ammonium chloride. So, this one has 10% of the active ingredient in it. So this is approved for using in eggs and poultry, as you see up here, for killing off fungus, viruses, bacteria, all types of stuff. People ask me all the time, well, can I just wipe them with a Clorox disinfecting wipe? Because it has the same active ingredient, but I just showed you one that said 10% active ingredient in that bottle. This has 0.18%. So there's barely any of that active ingredient in Clorox wipe. So it may work, but it's not going to work as effectively as an approved one. So you may kill off some of the stuff, but you're not necessarily giving the same concentration. I guess it's better than nothing, but it's probably not doing as effective a thing as using that. When you store your eggs, I mentioned you need to keep them clean. If you are grading eggs, just sell to retail, because I know that is in Hawaii, you do have to grade them there for at least a grade B as well, to sell them to. After they're graded, you need to refrigerate them, because if you don't, the grade can change. And then if you sell them a week later and the grade's changed, you're actually not selling that grade anymore. You're selling a lower grade egg. So you can get in trouble for that. So just refrigerate them to keep that grade as long as possible. So again, I'm going to show you some studies, some just so quick examples. So we looked at different ways to clean eggs. This is a common one. People on the internet, they sell a lot of these sandpaper things to basically sandpaper off the manure so that you get a more clean looking egg. Again, if you do that, you're removing the cuticle. We also did it where we just sponge cleaned them. So we got a sponge in hot water, kept 95-degree water, and we sponged off any stuff we saw them, and then we let them dry, and then we put them in and packaged them. We also used the organic egg cleanser that's available online. We soaked them in that, as it said to do, and then we let them dry. We also used hydrogen peroxide, or we misted them with hydrogen peroxide and then let them dry to see if that was going to kill stuff off. So what we saw is that this is a thing of total bacteria, not just salmonella or anything else. It's just all the bacteria that could have been on the outside. The sandpaper didn't really do much. It didn't matter if you refrigerated them; they were about the same. And same way, if you use the sponge and rinse them off, you reduced it pretty significantly versus using the sandpaper. And after storing them in the refrigerator for 3 weeks, there was barely any bacteria left on them. In this method, if you soaking them in that egg detergent, you kill them off. But what happened, we saw is they actually grew back in the refrigerator after a few weeks. We saw more bacteria come back. Same thing with the hydrogen peroxide. Initially, it knocked it down a little bit, and then they died off a little more. But then what was left in there came back and grew a little more back. So if you are going to do it, just rinsing them and using a sponge seem to be probably one of the more effective things for rinsing them. Coliforms are the harmful bacteria. So what we saw on the outside of our eggs was basically our eggs that we used from our farm had basically very little, so it didn't really do much for this experiment. We didn't really have much contamination. And the same thing on the inside of the eggs. We didn't have hardly any bacteria in our eggs. So our eggs were actually pretty clean for that. We tried it again, saw basically the same results. Maybe not as much grow back in these two. But again, washing your eggs with just a sponge and water seemed to be the best thing. It was better than the sandpaper dry method and better than these. on this study. We saw a little more stuff here. Again, not much of anything to talk about in those. So what we concluded from our little study was that washing is the method of washing is less important. What is more important is proper handling and the water conditions. So making sure you use hot water. It's not going to washing your eggs is never going to take all the bacteria off your eggs. So even if you wash them, you can't just assume you're not going to get salmonella because there's still some stuff growing on there. You can't totally kill them off. The one thing that may help with that, and I'll show you this next thing, is using some sanitizers after you wash them to help kill any bacteria that didn't get mixed off there. So we did that or we looked at just rinse them with water, rinse them with vinegar, because some people want to use vinegar as a natural method. Then we also use some bleach solution and then quaternary ammonia. Basically similar stuff where we just sprayed our eggs there and let them air dry. From what we saw is the control ones are really here. So they're doing nothing to them. Tap water lowered it a little, but not that much, as I said. Vinegar did a really good job. It was actually comparable to using chloride, a Clorox or a bleach solution. So using vinegar, if you want to use a natural thing, will do about as good as a bleach solution would. The best thing we saw for knocking them down with a sanitizer after we washed them was using a quaternary ammonia spray. It really knocked down the bacteria. There's obviously still some there, but this is basically almost zero when you get on when we're measuring here. So if you want to totally make your eggs bacteria free or as close as you can after you wash them, get a quaternary ammonia based egg sanitizer. Just to show you, it didn't affect the quality of the eggs when we graded them. None of the sanitation things affect any of that. Doesn't really matter. One other thing we've done in research wise is we've actually used hydrogen peroxide with UV light because that causes a reaction. This is dangerous, so don't do this one. But it makes it to basically there's no bacteria left at all in the egg. This would be a commercial way to kill all the eggs off if they decide to use it or kill all the bacteria on an egg off. But again, quaternary ammonia was the best one. It's better than chlorine. So use quaternary ammonia this one works okay. Bleach solutions, but quaternary ammonia works better. It also doesn't change the flavor of the egg because we did a taste panel. People can't tell the difference between your eggs if you sanitize them or not. So it's not going to make them taste weird. It's not going to change the texture of the egg. And so people didn't do that. So again, very effective. Quaternary ammonia is the best one. Vinegar works okay for washing them, as well as bleach. But again, using those things are good, but it's not going to get rid of everything as well. I'll show you. Somebody else did a study just to show you it's not just us. The refrigeration of your eggs, if you refrigerate your eggs, they're going to stay the same grade. If you don't, they're going to drop off grade pretty fast. So if they start out a double A egg, they're going to drop down to a grade B within a grade A within less than a week to a grade B within a week, and then get really much worse after that. Some people like to talk about this one up here because there's oil in your eggs. Some people talk about, can I oil my eggs to keep them longer? The main thing we saw is that it's more about refrigerating than it is anything else. Because some people think oil is going to seal those pores and things like that to keep them from changing grade. Same thing here with the yolk quality. If you don't refrigerate them, you lose the yolk quality. People say, how long can you store your eggs? Like the whites and the yolk quality go down. You can store your eggs for 3 months and still eat them. The main thing that's going to happen is the albumin and yolk quality are going to get thinner and thinner. So you're not going to be able to get a perfectly fried egg anymore because it's just going to go everywhere. Yolks are going to break. Certain baking things, if you need like a more firm egg white for your baking or something else, if you have old eggs, they're not going to work. The vitamins and the minerals will decrease a little, but overall they're probably the same. Eggs will last a long time in the refrigerator, and you can still eat them and get nutrition out of them. You don't have to throw them out just because they're a month old or something like that. They'll still be good to eat. They just don't have to be good for baking or certain methods of cooking. Again, this is showing out to 15 weeks of age. They don't change grade much. You get down to 1 grade lower after 15 weeks in the refrigerator. If you keep them refrigerated, you'll keep them pretty stable at 1 grade for up to like 2 months there, and then maybe they start to drop off. So basically, refrigeration is important. That's the main thing. Refrigerate your eggs. People say, well, why do I have to refrigerate my eggs? My grandma didn't refrigerate them, or maybe you've traveled around the world and you've seen places. This is in Brazil. Brazil does not refrigerate eggs in the grocery store. They just put them out in these little racks, and these stay out here like this. That's how you buy your eggs in Brazil. So they're at room temperature. You even look at them; they have a shelf life of 3 weeks. stamped on them at room temperature. So they'll sell them in the grocery store for that. That's fine and dandy. The reason we do it is for, as I said, for food safety. We refrigerate them because this is what can happen if you don't. This is bacterial spoilage. So you get these little green disgustingness happening inside of your eggs. If your eggs go rotten, one thing I tell people is rotten eggs turn into little bombs. So they build up gas in there, and sometimes if you just barely vibrate them, they explode, and then you're covered in rotten egg. So probably best not to have this happen to you. But again, you don't want to keep them at room temperature because it happen. Another thing that happens to keeping eggs at room temperature is this is black mold. So this is mold that went from, it was in the outside of the egg that gets into the inside between the membrane and the shell. So this is a non-refrigerated egg that when you crack it open, there's actually black mold inside the egg. Same here, coming through all the pores here that it came through. This is black mold in an unrefrigerated egg as it sat out for a few weeks. And then we cracked it open and look inside, and you can actually find black mold inside of it. So that's obviously not healthy for us all. So refrigerating, not to be on bacteria, there's other things you can get inside your egg there too. So this is basically what I found out from my investigation of selling eggs in Hawaii. It says if you're selling them in Hawaii, you must meet the DOA's grading and egg carton labeling requirements. So if you are selling them, make sure you contact that, the Department of Agriculture there, and follow their standards. And also the Department of Health requires a permit for if you're going to sell certain types of eggs at certain levels. So make sure you know you need to be having that permit. It said, from what I found, that farmers selling eggs from their farm, from your house, or wherever, or from a farmer's market directly to a consumer. So that means that you have people come into your house and you're selling eggs. According to Hawaii, you're supposed to have this temporary food permit. Those permits are valid for 20 days of sale of eggs within a 120-day period. So you have to keep getting new ones, apparently, to keep selling your eggs from your house. So make sure you have that permit and you're following the law so you don't get in trouble. I don't know how much they enforce it there. We have some laws like that in Texas that aren't really enforced, but if you do they decide to enforce them, they come with some pretty steep fines. So I'm not sure how that is there, but I would look into that, and maybe your agents can give you guys a little more information on that. All eggs that are for sale at retail establishments or farm markets must be clean with no visible or sewing stains on the shell, so you can't sell dirty looking eggs. Washing isn't required, and sanitation isn't required either there, but they did say on the one document that it's recommended to do those kind of things there. If you are selling eggs at retail places, they have to be in Hawaii a grade B. So that means you need to know how to grade eggs. I'm not going to teach you guys that here. If you are interested in learning how to grade eggs according to the USDA standard, in December, I am doing a free webinar. It's going to be pretty early for you all because I think I'm doing it at 11 o'clock my time. But if you all need that, I can share with you. If those of you from Hawaii, I can share recordings of that so you guys can, if you contact your agents or me directly, I can share how to grade eggs. Or you can just look up on the USDA. You can find that a PDF of how to grade them off the USDA's website. Download it. It's free, and it tells you what you're supposed to do and what you're supposed to look for. That's basically what I teach in the class. So if you think you can self-teach you, most places do not require. There are some states, and I don't think Hawaii is one of them, that requires you to take and pass an egg grader course. There are some in the mainland that require that. Texas is one of them. People who take my classes take it because they want to take it. This is actually a document that you guys can get from online from your extension group there. That tells you like how to package and what needs to be on your packaging. If you are selling in at a retail place, you need to make sure you label with the correct information on there, especially like where they came from, what their grade, their sizes, quantity, all this stuff on there. Make sure you're labeling them correctly. The importance of grading eggs, in case you don't know, a lot of people think it's a big just time suck or extra labor for you to do. The point of grading eggs is so that whoever's eating your eggs knows how fresh and sound those eggs are. Because if an egg is a grade A or double A, it's a fresher egg than a grade B egg is. So a grade B egg may have sat around a little while. If it's an ungraded egg, you have no idea how old that egg is. So it could be an egg somebody had in their refrigerator, somebody saying for 3 months and decided to finally sell. So again, for food safety and other things, you just don't know how long it's been sitting around. So having graded eggs gives the consumer a little more knowledge about the kind of eggs you're buying, and how sound they are, how safe they are for you to eat. Sorry, I saw there was one question. Okay. Yes, I think they're recording these sessions for you all. And that is the end of my talk. I don't know what time I went over a little bit. Sorry, but I'm available for questions here. Or if you think of some tomorrow, I'm also, my email you can find on the internet, or they can share with you all. Feel free to email me anytime, even though you're in Hawaii. I am here to help whoever, if you have questions about chickens.
Thank you, Dr. Archer. There is, I think there's one question in our Q&A. What is the nutritional advice to keep healthy our chickens?
So I'm going to talk about nutrition, I think tomorrow in the talk.
Yep.
So I will go over nutrition and breeds tomorrow. So I'll talk about what's important for chickens and give you some examples of what's important. But generally, making sure they're getting enough protein and energy, and a lot of that is the easiest way to feed a chicken is with a corn soybean based diet. If I'll give you some examples if you want to make feed, if you guys are wanting to try and make some blends, but it's easiest just to buy some feed from somewhere that's already making chicken feed to make sure they're getting a complete ration. One thing you don't want to do, and I'll talk about this tomorrow, is feed like just throwing some little bit of stuff out there. People want to feed fodder. That's good. It's extra stuff. Feeding plants, stuff. They'll eat your waste. They're omnivores. They will eat your scraps and things like that. But you need to make sure they have a balanced diet. Otherwise, what's going to happen is they won't be healthy, and they also won't lay you eggs if they're not getting all their nutrition. So you need to try and make sure that these other things you're doing to them, that somehow you're making sure that you're getting a balanced diet for them. And the easiest way to tell that is your chickens are going to tell you, because they're going to start looking unhealthy and getting skinny, or they're going to not so they're going to stop laying eggs. The first thing a chicken will do if it's not healthy or getting enough nutrition is it's not going to lay an egg for you anymore, or may start laying eggs with no shells on them or things like that, or deformed looking eggs. And that's when you can tell maybe something's going wrong with its nutrition. But I will talk a little more about that in detail tomorrow.
Just looking in the chat. Yes,
Yeah,
these sessions are being recorded.
Yeah, I can look at the chat too now.
And we have another question is, what do you recommend for pecking?
Okay, so if your chickens are pecking each other and going after each other, there are some people have tried little devices that you can put those like sunglasses on them so they can't look forward. This may work, may not work. There are some things that you can put on them. The solution called Peck No More. It's basically like pine tar. It's kind of you get it like it looks like a glue bottle. Basically, and you can spread it on where they're pecking on the other bird. Basically the idea behind that is it tastes bad, so they peck there and they want to not taste it anymore. It may stop it, it may not. If you have an aggressive bird, or your birds if that is also a learned behavior, they go after each other and they'll start teaching other birds to go after the weaker ones. Sometimes it's hard to stop. You may just have to get rid of the super aggressive bird. Certain breeds are a little more aggressive than other ones. So that's another thing. If you're keeping different breeds together, they may go after the less aggressive breeds because they're not going to fight back. Chickens will do a pecking order. Usually after they've learned who's the boss, they don't fight as much. So when you first get birds, they usually go after each other. But if they do start pecking each other, the only other thing to do, you can do in younger birds, if you're is basically there's machines you can buy, which I don't really recommend, where you can trim beaks and they blunts their beaks so they can't hurt each other. But you have to know what you're doing when doing that, because you can actually do it too far, birds. Otherwise, yeah, just trying to deter them different ways. Because chickens need the idea of those glasses is when chickens peck, they have to be able to look forward, like focus forward at what they're pecking at. And if you're blocking that, they can't see what's right in front of their face, so they can't peck anymore. So that's why some people try those little sunglass things you put on their beaks, but that only works if they keep them on and don't knock them off as well. But yeah, it's hard to stop chickens from once they start doing it. You get one that learns to be kind of aggressive towards everybody else. The worst thing to happen to them is if they start cannibalizing each other, because I've seen chickens kill each other by just pecking at each other's vents. They will go after blood. Once they get the taste of blood, they kind of keep doing it. So if one of them's pecking your birds to enough to where they're bleeding, if you can figure out who the one who's pecking, probably best for you to get rid of that one because once they taste the blood, they're going to keep going after everybody because they like the taste. I think there were some other questions I saw.
Yeah, we have another question regarding the amount of deadlight to set for chickens. Does this work with artificial light as well, or just UV light bulbs?
It'll be any type of light. So if you are, sorry, let me turn my camera back on so you guys can actually see me if you want to. Any artificial light bulb will work. LED lights, anything you can involve. It just needs to be a little bit of light to give that extra day length. UV light. I mean, I've done research with UV light. It makes them if you supplement with UV light, if they're not getting any outdoor access, it actually improves their health and stuff. But just basically giving them a little bit of light. It doesn't have to be just any light bulb you can buy, and it's just a little bit of light. It doesn't have to be a ton of light, just enough to. Because that's the one thing about kind of talking conversely, trying to keep them in the dark. Any little bit of light they get where they're at is going to be a lot to stimulate them too. So, just trying to keep them just a little bit of light. It can be any light bulb. Best practices. I see this one about organic. So
Yes, sanitation and feed for organic.
well, obviously organic. If you are trying to do organic eggs by the standard, you have to be raising them on land that is organic and feeding them eggs that are feeding them feed that is organic, and not using any compounds that are going to violate what the organic standards are. In terms of sanitation, like I said, there are some organic egg sanitizers. There are some for pesticides and things like that. If you're trying to knock pests down, you can use things that have like pyrethrin based or which is a plant based thing that will kill off pests as well. So you don't have to use like some of just straight chemical things. Feed wise, you just got to figure out where you can get organic feed. You can buy that. It's obviously going to be more expensive to have organic feed to try and create organic eggs, because you can't feed them anything in it, and it has to be a certain time period. I don't know what the current standards are. It used to be something like you had to have 5 years of showing that the land they were on wasn't ever have herbicides or chemical stuff sprayed on it in the last 5 years or something like that. So it can be difficult to get started. But then once you start, you got to keep those standards up. Which breeds are aggressive? I will go over breeds tomorrow, or when I do the breed talk. I will show you the most popular breeds that are out there. There are some breeds that are a little more aggressive than other breeds, especially the roosters. But then there are some breeds that are very docile and almost like lap dogs. If you get those breeds where you can tame them down to like they'll just sit on your kid's laps and let them pet them and things like that if you tame them down enough. So that is, I will go over that in another talk. My next 2 talks for those who are on here will be about breeds and nutrition, and then I'll talk about keeping your birds healthy. And I think I threw another topic in there, possibly in that one. But those are the main 3 topics I'm going to talk about the next couple of days. So if you can come back, you'll hear them. If you can't, like I said, I think they're recording these and probably going to put them up somewhere so you can listen or watch. So are we going to be able to that one recording? I don't know. You guys got to answer the question about the hearing disability one. I guess you guys are doing the transcripts of this so they can have subtitles. Possibly.
Yeah, and if it's possible, Dr. Archer, to share the presentation, maybe.
Yeah, I think you guys,
that will help.
if you didn't get them, feel free that you can share all the PowerPoints with everybody or put them somewhere they can download or send them out to them all. It's fine. If your chickens are 17 years old and have matured enough to start laying eggs, are they considered ready to feed the egg maker feed? So, yeah, so I'll talk about nutrition. There are different types of feed. So there is, if you are feeding what is technically a layer feed, you can start feeding layer feed around 17 weeks. They also sometimes, depending on what's available, you can find a pre-lay feed, which is one sometimes people feed from 17 weeks until about 20 weeks, but you can feed the layer by that point. Before that, I would probably be feeding just a grower feed, as it's called. And we'll talk about this tomorrow, but initially, I recommend feeding birds, and a lot of people don't want to do this because there's some people with the organic and other stuff. I recommend feeding a starter feed that is that has that is a medicated starter feed, because mainly what's in the medicated starter feed is a coccidiostat, which stops them hopefully from getting coccidia, because that happens in the first 3 weeks of life. And that it kills chicken. If they get it, it kills chickens off pretty heavily. So if you can prevent that in the first 3 weeks and they usually don't get it after that, and then you go in regular feed, and that coccidiostat will never be in your eggs, because it's going to be way out of the bird's system by the time they're laying eggs. So I usually recommend that. So someone says, I'm struggling to give lights at night and not get too much light, but avoid the mongoose coming. Oh yeah, you guys have mongooses. I don't have to deal with that. The hardest thing with predators is to try and predator proof whatever you are keeping your chickens in at night as much as possible so they can't get to the birds.
Mister.
Huh? Hello? Oh, somebody said something. One way, if you have a structure, and I don't know how the monkeys get in there, but if they're digging under, one way to do that is to bury chicken wire or something into the ground around your coop. So as the predator tries to dig in, they hit that chicken wire or wire, and they just get discouraged and go away. It's hard to stop predators. I've seen hawks and birds of prey reach through chicken wire, and if the chicken got close enough to it, would grab it and then pull it over, and they would eat the chicken through the chicken wire. So they kill the bird inside the coop, even though the bird of prey was outside. So that can be a thing as well. It's mainly about trying to keep them around, because you're probably going to attract predators to predators are going to come around because for lots of reasons, to eat the feed, to eat if you're attracting rodents, attracting bugs, they're coming around to eat things. And then when they get there, they realize there's a chicken or there's eggs, and then they start doing that too. So, that's one of the main problems. I'm trying to scroll through. Do you need to clean our eggs with disinfectant? As I said in the talk, you don't have to do either of them. I have chickens at my house, and I never wash or disinfect my eggs. I just make sure I cook those eggs heavily. If I'm going to eat a runny egg, it's going to probably be more of a store-bought egg, because I'm pretty sure. But I also have my nest box set up where my eggs do not get dirty. I'm collecting what we call visually nest clean eggs. So if they have feces on them or blood on them, I'm not going to eat them. I'm eating the eggs that look relatively clean, so that I'm pretty sure they've been cleaned, and I cook them thoroughly. You don't have to do anything if you don't want to, but if you do it the way I talked about, just make sure you're using the appropriate ones and you're letting them dry and all those things in between. I think that was all the questions in the chat that I saw.